Hello and welcome to Hooting Mandrills. I'm Jeremy.
I'm Sam.
And today we will be talking about Foundations, the forever 5-year set, and we'll be talking about blue cards.
Arcanis the Omnipotent. This is a pretty old reprint, I think from like Legends or Tempest or something. That's probably wrong. It's probably a different one, but it's old. And it's 3 and 3 blue, or a 3/4 wizard. Taps to draw 3 cards. So activated ability, Ancestral Recall, 2 and 2 blue to bounce it to its owner's hand. So yeah, this is a very old school control finisher from a different time in Magic. It's not really good enough for standard on its own, but tap to draw 3 cards is a hell of a thing to put under a Soul Cauldron.
Yeah, that's pretty fun. I think that mix that with like Proft's Edict and you're starting to cook with some gas. That's 4 counters at least, 5 counters. I don't know, it's a lot of counters, depends on how you play it, but mill's pretty easy in blue, self-mill, other mill. I think that maybe this card sneaks in on some kind of Soul Cauldron shenanigans.
Here's a control finisher that's a little bit more of the modern day. Archmage of Runes, 3 and 2 blue for a 3/6. Dummy thick giant wizard, but he's actually not a dummy. He's very smart and lets your smart spells, your instants and sorceries, cost 1 less to cast. So sort of a Baral Goblin Electromancer, little overcosted for that, but whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, you draw a card. That's powerful.
Right, so it's a little tricky, obviously. 5 mana. I mean, if you're playing control, you'll get there at some point. You just control them to the point until you're ready to plop this guy down.
If you plop this guy down on 6 with 1 mana up, you can negate a spell that goes after it. It's sort of similar to Leer, which you might remember for getting Divide by 0 banned in Standard. Wizards of the Coast had to tell you that you couldn't divide by 0 because of Leer, Disciple of the Drowned. And Leer got Divide by 0 banned because Divide by 0 sort of skirted its can't be countered clause, and you just got the whole upside. Archmage of Runes is going to take a while to accrue that upside, whereas when Leer hits the board, you just have 10 instants and sorceries in your graveyard in that kind of deck that if you can untap with it, you're just there. But no, if you can protect this with a negate, that negate draws you a card, you start playing other cards, other spells, it's going to run away with games. I think this card could be pretty good.
Yeah, definitely. You see a reluctance in control players to play any creature at all, but this is a good one if they decide that they want to start to win the game at some point and to do things. Maybe this will see some play.
Curator of Destinies, 4 and 2 blue, 5/5 can't be countered, Sphinx. When this creature enters, look at the top 5 cards of your library, separate them into a face down and face up pile. An opponent chooses one of those piles to go to your hand and the other goes to the graveyard. Sort of like a Fact or Fiction. It's just like a big dumb Sphinx for commander. Not nearly as exciting as a control finisher.
Yeah, I don't think that this card is playable in 60 card. Okay,
here's a card
that I like.
Yeah, that hasn't been playable in 60 card other than I guess Historic, because it happens to be on Arena, but this is a reprint from a commander set in Corsair Captain. 2 and a blue, ETB, make a treasure. Other pirates you control get +1/+1. So Lord for pirates.
Yeah, I tried playing pirates in Historic. It didn't exactly work out, but this card is really good. I mean, yeah, I like this card for pirate kindred decks. You know, it both does the Lord thing and also creates a treasure, and most of the synergy with pirates is artifact creation, so it kind of does its thing. Pirates has already been like on the cusp of being playable in Standard, so maybe this pushes it over. I don't know though. I mean, I don't think that Pirates is going to be tier 1 or anything, but maybe playable if you're a kindred gamer.
Drake Hatcher is next. 1 and a blue, 1/3 Vigilance Prowess. Whenever this deals combat damage to a player, put that many incubation counters on it, and you can remove 3 incubation counters to make a 2/2 Drake with flying.
So one of we already have that Kitza Otter, a 1/3 with prowess. I think that the problem we're seeing with cards like this is they do not say haste on them. So it's like pretty hard in your prowess deck to drop down a 2-drop that you just kind of have to pray lives, or you have to play it on turn 3 with protection set up. But by then, is this card really taking away the game? I mean, no. But this card doesn't have to be strictly a prowess card. You could play this in other contexts.
Yeah, I think as a sort of spellsy but less aggro prowess type of deck card, I think this is probably a little worse than a Porinoculus.
A lot worse than a Porinoculus.
A Porinoculus poops out 2/2s with a lot less work. It's work to get it into play by comparison, but
there's so many
it
ways
does
to
the job
easily
of
cheat at standard.
Yeah, it does the job of pooping out 2/2s. This thing, yeah, I'm not sold on this one.
Yeah, I don't see this.
The
card
2/2s this
highly
thing
playable.
makes do fly, which is nice, I guess. But
the thing, I mean, you can just turn your Porinoculus manifest into more Porinoculus or whatever, you know.
It's a little less vulnerable to graveyard hate, maybe. It does some things, but I am not super impressed by this card. Another card I'm not super impressed by is Fae Trickster. 3 and a blue, 4/2 flash flying. You may cast spells as though they had flash. So just gonna point out that this is very similar to the text of the scrapped text for Nadu that they decided was too much of a problem, so they just had to submit a new untested version, forget that Cephalid Breakfast exists, and break Modern for an entire summer. But this is something that they're comfortable putting in standard forever. I guess it's not legendary, can't be in the command zone. Yeah, there's some fairy stuff going on in standard. Most of it already is pretty flashy. This is not doing a ton for it, I don't think.
Yeah, I don't know if there's any sorceries you really need to cast at instant speed, but maybe.
Maybe you can do the draw step Kolaghan's command thing by casting the creature side of Spellscorn Coven in their draw step if your opponent's pretty juiced on resources and you're at that point of the game. But at that point, we're talking about 2 4-drops that are understated and maybe doing something together. I think this card's not super exciting in standard.
Do very much in standard with that. Okay, we have Homunculus Horde. 3 and a blue for 2/2 creature Homunculus. Whenever you draw your second card each turn, create a creature token that's a copy of this creature.
So 4 mana 2/2 is pretty stinky. The reason that I think this card might be okay is that Enduring Innocence and Enduring Curiosity are so good. So I think you have a decent shot of being in a deck where this ETB's triggers Enduring Innocence, makes a second one, or you can play this, you have a good attack to trigger your Enduring Curiosity, draw a card, make a second one before your opponent has a chance to really mess with it too much. At that point, you've gotten 2 2/2s for 4, which is still not quite standard playable, but it's a pretty good limited card most of the time. But it increases your chance of untapping with at least 1, and once you do that, this card's pretty silly.
Yeah, I mean, if you can draw a second card on the turn it comes down, as well as your opponent's turn, then you're snowballing and going pretty fast. Obviously, a little harder to draw 2 cards on your opponent's turn. We've got Quick Study, and there's that mode of that blue counter spell from...
Oh, yeah. 3 steps ahead has a catalog mode.
So you have some ways of drawing cards later in the game. I don't really see it as like a control finisher, though.
No, this is more for like a blue-white sort of tempo-y deck, I think.
I agree.
But yeah, if you're drawing a second card, if you keep one of these and start really doubling them, you're having a good time.
Next, we have Kaito Cunning Infiltrator for a colorless and 2 blue. Legendary Planeswalker Kaito with 3 Planeswalker loyalty. +1 is up to 1 target creature you control can't be blocked this turn. Draw a card, then discard a card. The -2 is create a creature, 2/1 ninja token. And then your -9 is you get an emblem with whenever a player casts a spell, you create a 2/1 blue ninja creature token. So this card's kind of cool.
Also a static ability that whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, put a loyalty.
Oh, missed that. Yeah, that's good too. So kind of fun if you're especially mixing ninjas with Kaito or something with the other Kaito. I think this card's a little worse than the blue-black Kaito that kind of ran away with a lot of the standard tournament in worlds with the blue-black deck.
Like most Kaitos, this card I think is very good when you're ahead and pretty bad when you're behind. If you can play this, get a good hit in, maybe you flash in Fairy Mastermind at the end of turn 2, your opponent's turn, play Kaito, hit with it, either make a ninja or plus, and you're at still 2 or maybe 4 or 5 loyalty. 5 if you plus it. It's kind of cute with FOMO, maybe you play a cantrip or fetch with a Fabled Passage on 1, play FOMO on 2, discard a card, play Kaito on 3, discard a card, have one of them have multiple types, get Delirium and get to hit twice and put it on 6 loyalty. That's pretty hard to deal with. Much worse when things aren't going exactly your way. If you don't have good attacks, this is kind of just a 3-mana 2/1 that maybe gains you some life, or 3 mana to loot and maybe gain some life, which is not nearly as good.
Yeah, I'm not super duper impressed with this card, but maybe it sees a little bit of play in standard. But I mean, definitely pick this card up if you're drafting Planeswalkers. Always run away with drafts. This one maybe not, but it's still pretty good, so I could definitely... I mean, if you can -9 in a draft, you'll win.
Next is Kiora, the Rising Tide. Desparked Kiora, 2 and a blue, 3/2 legendary Merfolk Noble. When Kiora enters, draw 2, discard 2. And so when Kiora attacks, if you have Threshold, that's 7 or more cards in your graveyard, you may create Scion of the Deep, a legendary 8/8 blue octopus creature token. This is sort of pretty comparable to Steam Core Scholar. Steam Core Scholar has flying and vigilance and doesn't always make you discard 2. You can instead discard a single instant sorcery or creature with flying. But we've still seen that do some stuff in Prophetic Memory type of decks. You get a bunch of cards going and if you can fill your graveyard enough, this is a pretty good attack trigger.
Yeah, I mean, whipping out an 8/8 octopus, pretty fun, I think. I like this card. I would hope that some kind of Proph's Eidetic Memory deck could arise out of it. It being legendary, obviously, you probably don't want to throw 4 of this card into your deck. Maybe you do if you've got
it does
the right
loot.
strategy.
You just loot the extra copies.
Just loot the
if
extra
it's good
copies.
enough.
That's true. Yeah. If it is the way, then yeah, I could see this card seeing a little bit of standard play.
Yeah. It's sort of like Omnivorous Flytrap, where if you can turn it on, this is a really good attack trigger. So, maybe in older Arena of Glory formats too. I think Threshold is probably harder than Super Delirium, honestly, or maybe comparable to the Super Delirium. It's definitely harder than Delirium.
Yeah, that's kind of the problem. And in standard, you only have the Fabled Passage as a reliable fetch land that you would want to play. So it's a little bit tricky to count on putting cards in your yard for free, but there's certainly a lot of ways to do it.
Next, we have Lunar Insight. 2 and a blue, sorcery, draw a card for each different mana value among non-land permanents you control. So this is mostly a commander card. You have to work pretty hard to make this into a divination. I mean, you can talk about cards like Spyglass Siren that make a 0 and a 1, technically, but stuff has to live or remain in play somehow. now, just for your sorcery speed draw spell, I don't really see it.
Yeah, I don't see this as playable in Standard. Here's another card that may or may not be playable in Standard, at least for right now. Maybe in the future we'll see an easier way to play this card. But yeah, Omniscience, 7 and 3 blue enchantment. You may cast spells from your hand without paying their mana cost. So obviously incredibly powerful card.
As big dumb things to cheat into play go, this is the biggest, dumbest thing. It's not the thing to end all big dumb things, because you just get to cast all the other big dumb things for free if they're in your hand. It's an enchantment, so it's not as easy as a creature to cheat out. We have a few things. You can plot it off Make Your Own Luck. If you can trigger Survival on Kona, you can reanimate it with Invasion of Tolvada. And I also don't know if there's a way to win the game like Omnitel type decks in older formats, or Omniscience decks usually have some sequence that wins the game immediately in older formats. There were the Conspiracy Unraveler decks, the Reenact the Crime decks, which sort of did that by looping Jace, so maybe there's something, I'm not sure. It'll probably do something at some point in Standard. There'll be some sort of combo deck that wants this.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll see this card pop up at some point. I'm sure that people will work tirelessly to make it happen. But yeah, for now, I mean, this is being printed into Pioneer as well.
No, it's legal in Pioneer. It's already
in Pioneer. There's no deck in Pioneer that is playing it, though, really.
Yeah, I saw some people brewing around Omniscience Kona when Kona was first spoiled. I don't know if any of it's really caught on.
Okay, well, I haven't seen it in the Explorer queue. So let's move on.
Sphinx of Forgotten Lore. Snapcaster at home and Snapcaster at home forever.
For a lot, though.
Yeah, 3/3. That's why it's Snapcaster at home. 3/3 flash flying. When it attacks, target instant or sorcery card in your graveyard gains flashback until the end of turn. Flashback cost is equal to the card's mana cost. Yeah, so you're not countering anything with this, because at least not anything. In fact, almost not anything. I guess if Wandering Emperor were still in Standard, no, not even then, it would be tapped by the time you targeted the counter spell in your. So you're never countering anything with this, because it has to attack. So it's only stuff that you can use proactively on your turn. So you can maybe clear a flying blocker with a Go for the Throat or something when you untap with this. But it doesn't play great with counter spells. Also competes fairly directly with Enduring Curiosity, which I think is probably just a less fragile, better card.
Right. I mean, then you don't have to protect your you can't really protect your graveyard, but like this card is weak to graveyard hate, where Enduring Curiosity is just drawing cards, which, you know, as long as your deck doesn't suck, there's something to get. Yeah, I don't know. I don't like this card. I don't think that it's very playable, but potentially, maybe, I don't know. Maybe if there's, I don't know. It seems too expensive. I don't think it's playable.
If you're playing fewer than 4 copies of Enduring Curiosity, you just play more copies, and I don't think you want more 4-drops, really.
No, yeah, at a 4-drop, this card hardly seems playable. I'm sure it's good in draft.
We've got some more rare and mythic reprints. Most of them are kind of commander cards. Tempest Djinn is just worse than Haughty Djinn, and doesn't let you play non-islands, really. Harbinger of the Tides is sort of playable in
Merfolk. Seems close.
Yeah,
I mean, they already have quite a few decent cards. That Explore Merfolk deck was doing pretty well for a while anyway. That was a few standards ago, but I don't think it lost any cards.
Time Stop Voracious Great Shark are fun as like big dumb things to be doing. A little bit more. Great Shark more of a cube card than a constructed, or a commander card than a constructed card. But you know, there's some fun stuff here. Dictate of Crufix is sort of a Howling Mine if you're into that kind of thing and can cast it.
Yeah, Rite of Replication, a fun card as well. Impossible to play in in standard, but
yeah, you also would have to want more than 4 copies of Doppelgang, I think.
Yeah, or Doppelgang's just better.
Moving on to some lower rarity cards. We've got Spectral Sailor and Brineborn Cutthroat back in Standard. Both pretty reasonable cards for sort of a flashy type of deck. Cutthroat's a Merfolk, if you're both Merfolk and flashy. Both pretty good cards, I think. Sailor's a pirate. I don't know if how you would say it does compared to the other 1-drops you could play in Pirates.
Right, yeah, it's harder for that Goblin Tomb Raider to be playable in Standard, because unlike in Pauper, you don't just like play Ancient Den, Goblin guide you, you know?
Yeah, even in Historic, you don't just play Ancient Den, even with some of the artifact lands coming. But yeah, they're here. Spectral Sailor is also a spirit, which will probably matter sometime in the next 5 years.
Yeah, I mean, I think I would probably play Spectral Sailor at some amount in a Pirate Standard Kindred deck. I mean, I don't see playing that First Strike one at all. I don't see, like, obviously you're already playing 4 copies of Spyglass Siren.
You need a density of 1-drops. This is one to consider. Elementalist Adept. 1 and a blue, common human wizard, flash prowess. So we've been repeating that haste is important on prowess 2-drops. Flash is Flash is getting into that direction, kind of.
But anyone trying to control, like, if you just think about a game and how it would actually play out, like they're probably just gonna hold up their kill spell if you're leaving up 2 mana, one of them being blue at least.
Yeah,
so,
I was wondering if in Pauper this might be a playable threat in maybe not exactly terror, but something like it. But I think that I'm also a little unsure. I really ended up not liking the Sneaky Snackers when I tried them in Pauper Dimir Terror. You certainly have good cantrippy stuff to trigger prowess, but if you're leaving up counter spells, it's hard to trigger prowess. It's a little sketchy, but I think it's maybe interesting in Pauper.
Yeah, I could maybe see it. I think it's a little weak, but without Monastery Swiftspear being banned in Pauper, it doesn't exactly have the friendliest home without other prowess cards being playable in Pauper. But I could, yeah, maybe worth a try.
All right, another, it's sort of interesting and surprising that they printed this cycle of color hate cards. I thought they had basically decided that was bad design and stopped doing it. I think if they had decided that, they would have probably been correct. Like, these weird narrow color hate stuff is just kind of obnoxious. But we have Flashfreeze, counter target red or green spell for 1 and a blue. So if your opponent is in Gruul, this is just counter spell that's easy to cast. It is pretty comparable to Change the Equation. There is at least 1 7-mana green spell that is counterable if your opponent doesn't have a Cavern that you would care about countering, maybe. But I don't know that you would care about boarding in like a green hate card against Domain. I don't know. It's around. It's
maybe. I mean, it counters Overlord of the Hauntwoods, Beanstalk, Praxa if it's not under a Cavern. I don't know. Probably not, but I don't know. I don't, obviously, like, in Pauper, we see a lot of red and blue elemental blasts in sideboards, but yeah, this is obviously not legal in Pauper, but
it's a reprint. I don't remember if the old version is at common, but
I bet there's better ways to sideboard.
It's worse than Beb.
I mean, yeah.
It is. Beb is at least twice as good. Beb is more than twice as good. It's a better effect for half as much. Mischevious Mystic. 1 blue, 2/1 human wizard at uncommon. It has flying, and when you draw your second card each turn, you make a fairy. So again, Enduring Innocence, Enduring Curiosity are really good. And if this thing sticks and gets to trigger once or twice, it's pretty good. A 1/1 flyer isn't irrelevant at all, especially when it might draw you more cards, because Enduring Innocence and Curiosity are really, really good.
Yeah, I could see this card finding a way into a deck or two. I think it's neat. I think that you'll be able to draw cards, making a bunch of like, it's kind of like
Third Path Iconoclast.
It's
sort of harder to make the bodies, but the bodies are better.
Up next, we have Think Twice for a colorless and a blue. Draw a card, flashback 2 and a blue to do the same. We have better versions of this card in Standard, and Deduce, and, you know, even Sleight of Hand is just better than this card, probably.
Yeah, I think that if you are a controlling deck that is interested in playing a card like Deduce is better unless you have some sort of big payoff for actually casting a spell. If you're in a deck, and most of the decks that really care about casting spells just want cheaper cantrips rather than the flashback value.
It was a little tough even in Draft, maybe, because 5 mana to draw 2 is pretty poor.
I think in draft this card's probably a good
It's probably
comment.
sometimes you should still probably take some of this card, but I think there's probably better.
Yeah, I mean, probably a good card in Commander. It does spellsy stuff. You can stagger it out in Limited. Also, probably not good in Commander, but Unsummon is back.
So this is cool. We've kind of like seen these mostly like blue-green type decks that sometimes you want to bounce your Terror, your Eddie Merc Crab, as well as your opponent's creatures. You know, like if you're going to be able to put it back out for a single mana or 2 mana, whatever. You kill spell, I'll take it back instead. Just a little bit more versatility than what we have in Standard at the moment.
Yeah, not much more to say about it. And indeed, not much more to say about blue. I think Opt is also in the set, and I forgot to make a slide for it. Consider is gone, RIP, except kind of rest in peace, because Opt doesn't fill your graveyard as well. But it's basically like getting rest in peace, having to play Opt instead of Consider. It's not, though. Opt's a pretty good cantrip. It's also here. I forgot to put it on the slideshow. I am learning and growing and doing better. Thank you for holding me accountable in the comments and by pressing the like button. It will hold me accountable if you do that.
We'll make sure to never miss a slide again if you hit the like button. All right. Well, signing off. We'll see you guys for the next one.